Yeah, okay.
not as viable as they were, but
Yeah, Florida's on its way out.
Actually, Delaware.
I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Appreciate, there are a lot of meetings for Ann or for you or for anyone else.
I'd like to call this meeting to order.
I mean,
This is the Stormwater Utility Task Force. It's on the streams, it's 5 minutes past 2. And our first, everybody shut off your cell phones. Our first order of business is to call roll. And I'm going to start calling the roll. Jan Conacy. Here. Bob Suppies.
Here.
Janice Miller.
Here.
Bruce Williams.
here.
Joe Vecchio.
Here.
Frank Cooper.
Here.
Mary Peck.
Here.
Susan Stewart. Elise Burns.
Here.
Tom Childers.
Here.
Suzanne Good.
Here.
Letitia Gomez.
Here.
Eric. I'm missing Eric. Eric Seward. Kevin's not going to be here today. He's watching on the stream. Everybody wave. Christine Estes from AECOM is here.
Yes, here.
Amy Mendelson from AECOM is here. Brady Caldwell from AECOM here. I went and asked you their names, and I could just read them off this list if I needed to. City Manager Lawrence Christian's here. We thank you for being here. And Brent's running the console, so I guess we're ready to go. Do I hear anybody talk about minutes yet? Do I hear, have you all had a chance to look the minutes over and make corrections or submit corrections? Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of accepting the minutes, passing the minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed? There was no correspondence from the public on the 6th of December. And one of our task force members sent an email, which we posted, and the minutes have been approved, and they're going to be added to the official record. We got a lot to cover today. What we're going to do, if you all have read the agenda, we're not going to have time to talk about our recent trip to Everest or what we did last week. We're going to get after it and get with the meeting, and I'm going to ask everybody to stay on track and to reply when I've given you the okay. And what we're going to do is go down the list and yeah, we're ready. Christine, go ahead and carry on.
Great, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody, and sorry about the Eagles for any fans in the room. It was a great game, though. All right, so today, yeah, I really want to just focus on, I don't have any presentations today, no slides. Just want to pull up the report, step through it with you all, section by section. Oh. You're not seen on the camera. Can you stand up? Oh, not on camera? Okay, sure. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So just wanted to go through the report section by section, hear your all's general comments. If you have specific comments, you can certainly email them to me. I'm assuming some of the comments might be conflicting, so I'll be going over those with Jay and Kevin just to resolve any conflicting comments and how we move forward after that. So I know, Jay, you have revised the executive summary, so you want to pull that up first and get comments on that? And this executive summary is really meant to summarize the report. I know not everyone's going to read the 40-plus pages of the entire report. They're probably going to focus on the executive summary. So it is a very important piece of the report, so we want to make sure that it's accurate and it includes all the important information that you think should be in there. So let me pull that up. JJ, do you want to add to the importance of that document and what you felt needed to be added in there?
Yeah, let's talk just for a second, because I was thinking about some other things while we were getting started here. The part where we talk about first I'd like to ask everybody else to chip in and give me some, we're talking your executive summary, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've all had a copy of the one that I did. Is that correct? Has everybody had that copy? And you've had a chance to go through it? I didn't introduce Lynn Cohn, our communications director. We're glad you're here. And she's going to kind of help me go on this as we go along, because my plan is to make a presentation based on that executive summary. And we're going to use that as my ground core presentation as we talk to the citizen groups, chamber, religious groups all around town. She has a strategic, am I hitting my microphone, bashing it around?
Wasn't clear. Go ahead.
Is that better? Yeah. She has a strategic communications plan that's a good one, and I think we're going to end up following that. And I based my my executive summary on that. So, go, Jan.
All right, I guess I have a couple of things. One of the things that, as I go through the recommendations and I go through the executive summary that's never mentioned, is the Lakes Management Plan. We don't have one for Lake Gerard, but all of our stuff on one side of town is going into it. And there's theoretically one underway for Silver Lake done by the state, the city, and the Corps of Engineers. But how can you have a stormwater management plan when you have your lakes functioning as stormwater retention ponds and you don't have a stormwater management plan, or you don't have a lakes management plan? And we asked at the very first meeting, I asked Kevin about that months and months ago, and he said, oh, we'll have it, we'll have it. We don't have it, we've never seen it, and we don't know how the plan addresses the stormwater going into the lake and then going into the ocean from there, from both lakes. The city, as far as I know, does not have a stormwater, or doesn't have a lakes management plan for Lake Gerard. The one that's being worked on now is for Silver Lake. So I think that's a blatant or an obvious miss in this whole document. As we all know, the bulk of the drains are going into Silver Lake, almost 40 of them. And then that goes into the ocean, and then we have bacteria, and then the businesses are not happy when the beaches are closed. So I think that I didn't see anything in here that talks about the Lakes Management Plan. And I represent SOLA here, and we're horrified, frankly, that it's not being mentioned and that it's not tied in. And in fact, we met with our state senator yesterday, and the first thing he said is, well, how does the Lake Management Plan tie into the stormwater, the stormwater master plan? We're like, we don't know, because we haven't seen it. We don't know anything about it. So I think that's crucially important and needs to be included in anything we do. And, I guess someday somebody will share it with the public, because no one has ever seen it.
We have a year
I know.
to get this ordinance passed. And
I mean, the plan was supposed to be ready at Christmas time, Jay. It's long past Christmas.
yeah, and I'm not sure how you get the Corps of Engineers to get in gear, or how we find that.
I don't know, but I would think that, that Kevin would know, or somebody would know.
Yeah.
I certainly hope somebody knows.
Kevin's staying on him. It's just hard to get him to move. Now,
Well,
if
that's
they
why you
don't
have Senator Carper and Senator Coons to say what's going on. I guess I'm making
Yeah.
an issue of this because it's blatantly obvious that it's not there. And then when I have a state senator say to me, well, how does this tie into the Lakes Management Plan? And we're like, we don't know, because we've never seen it.
Yeah.
So I want to point that out, and it's not even mentioned, the health, the quality of the water in the lakes is not really mentioned. Yet, if I was a business person, I would be hugely concerned about the quality of the water in the lakes because it ends up going out into the ocean. And I think, quantity and quality go together when you're looking at a plan like this. So that's, I just wanted to.
I think the answer is the ordinance for the utility can't go to completion until we get a lakes management plan.
Right, and
Now,
the stormwater.
The best we can do, and I think our job, is to say that the stormwater management plan has to be completed before we adopt the utility.
Right.
Our job's to get the utility prepared to go to do the feasibility, which we're doing, and which we're gonna have that pretty much done by the next week or two.
Jay, could I
But
just
we
add-
can't,
sorry.
we aren't, our job is probably not to take over the lakes management plan.
I'm not suggesting that we
No,
take it over,
or to
Jay, but
demand that it
I'm
be done.
suggesting that when AECom is looking at, their report doesn't mention the lakes, essentially, where all the stuff is going. It needs to be included as part of the report. When you start telling people, when the communication plan comes out, when I tell people, and I'm sure some of you have the same thing, that Lake Gerard and Silver Lake are essentially stormwater retention ponds. They look good on the outside. No one thinks about it. No one wonders what happens with the stuff that goes down the drain, but that's where it goes.
Jay, could I add something quickly about a related issue to that? That the report likewise doesn't include what you saw in my letter from December. We were on the West Coast at the time. It seems though we need to include our commitment to changing the building code to mandate pervious cover for new construction and for renovations. We just had a parking lot in the 400 block of Rehoboth Avenue on the north side redo its asphalt parking lot. So I feel like we're not doing the things that could concretely and quickly reduce stormwater runoff. If we just let a strip mall repave its driveway with pure black asphalt, this was back in October, I believe. So those two things, I agree with Jan, both things need mention that we will do our best to address, because those things will really mitigate our stormwater issues
Well,
a
it
bit.
goes beyond credits. Dewey Beach requires pervious hard surface.
You're saying things that we all
We've been
already
saying
know.
it. I know, we've been
that we've
saying
all
that.
talked about.
Yeah.
That we talked about the second meeting, and now we're
Right.
stuck on this.
But we didn't talk about the lakes, but yeah, we did talk about it, but the recommendation
we
is not
recommended that
credits.
we have a stormwater management plan.
Right.
That includes the lakes. We have 2 lakes, we know that. So for us to sit here and talk about lake management, we recommend that we do a stormwater management plan. If the commissioners decide not to do that, they can do that. But we're recommending it, and we've already done that.
And that it include a lakes management plan for both Lake Gerard and Silver Lake within the stormwater management plan.
Yes. Yeah. So we haven't covered any new ground.
Well, I think that,
We're repeating what we've already
but it's
talked
not
about.
mentioned in here, Jay. It's
not
not
here.
mentioned anywhere
Or
in here.
in here.
No,
The
except in the
costs are
summary.
mentioned. So.
Glaringly absent.
So just wanted to clarify. So this report is really focused on how the city's going to fund their stormwater management, not to get into details of how, of the lake management plan. That would be a separate plan. So the costs of that lake management plan, though, are included in the expenses shown here in, what table is this? Table 2. As well as the stormwater management plan was also included as a cost here too, to be covered by the stormwater utility. That was actually zeroed out, if you notice it on the table here, because it is expected to be complete before the stormwater utility goes into effect. So within the next year. So that's why that line is 0. But the expectation is that will be complete before the stormwater utility becomes effective. And Kevin's not here to explain that a little bit more, but so just wanted to note that. So we are just focusing with this feasibility study on how the city will fund stormwater management. Obviously, it's a good comment, though, that maybe we add, within the introduction, add some more background on the lake management, the need for that, the importance of the lakes as stormwater retention basins, how they treat quality. I think some information like that could go into the introduction, since that is so important to the city. But, the details of that would be separate in that lake management
I think
plan.
it's important to be in it. Thank you, Christine.
Yep.
The third to the, I've gotten some feedback, the third to the last paragraph on the executive summary, the one that talks about, the one that's right ahead of rate mitigation. I wrote in there, using 500 square feet blocks as billing units, it is estimated for FY 2025 that the quarterly utility fee for a single-family residential property with 300 square feet would be $111. And that doesn't sound like it goes well. Bruce suggested that maybe we talk about, this might be a place to talk about a little bit of mitigation. Instead of saying $111 a quarter, maybe I could say $423 a year with plans to mitigate down to $270 or $280. Does anybody else think that's crazy sounding, what we got in there?
Jay,
Does that ring a bell, that red flag?
Jay, my concern is that this second paragraph under recommended utility rates is not consistent with the report.
No, we're gonna have to, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
whatever we do, it should be consistent, so it doesn't confuse the reader, because if they take the time to read both, they aren't gonna know what to do.
Yes.
And your comment about, and we hope to lower it, I don't know that we, as a recommending body, have the ability to do that. I mean, that's all based on what the mayor and the commissioners decide to do.
But we're recommending mitigation, and maybe we could recommend mitigation there. I just don't, I agree with those that think that stands out like a red flag.
It's just, it isn't consistent. It'll confuse people who take the time to read it.
If we're always talking about annual costs. And so if we start with the 423, which is covering everything, and then maybe even refer to the next section, which talks about the 39% that the city would pay from the general fund for roads, and that's a $251 annual amount.
But I don't think we talk about the 39%, do we? Do we talk about that in the, if I missed that?
Yes, it's in the body.
Okay, so,
So that's one way of saying
So-
there's an option to take that 423 down.
yeah, the other would be. Would that sound unreasonable to folks to do that?
I'm just worried.
Say it
we're-
again.
We're highlighting credits, which is a nebulous concept. Who in City Hall is going to administrate this to figure out if you're eligible based on that you changed out your driveway or whatever you did? So I'm very concerned that we are immediately like trying to placate people, I guess, by saying there's this credits or you can go through an appeals process, all of which, when I read this report, this is a huge administrative burden on someone who, on people in City Hall who haven't even been, designated. That is one of several problems I see with, trying to promise people credits.
Now's not the time to put personal comments or what you think, you believe you think, or what you prefer. Now's the time to work on this report. And I wish we could do that because we're already 24 minutes past 2 o'clock. And we
Jay?
haven't even finished with the executive summary yet.
Frank is calling you.
Frank, go.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have the mitigation in here because that is our goal, is to get people to install impervious surfaces and whatnot and to build with this consideration when they're doing projects. So I think it would be a glaring error if there wasn't that mention that this is, you know, the
Okay.
thrust of the city's
So
priorities.
why don't we go forward and go ahead and use the yearly fee and make that match to everything behind? And then bring up mitigation in this paragraph.
Right. And you could, I mean, you could frame these as estimates. You know what I mean? So that you're not.
Well, they are, yeah.
Yeah. Both the mitigation and the fees.
Okay. Bruce?
And that's what we're trying to do, is to present what we think is the best way, but also to provide options and mitigation, and the city doing some mixed funding in the context of funding it all is, I think, our job.
Okay.
Jay, also, I think, you were saying that this may be the only thing that people will read.
Oh, almost certainly.
So if we leave out something big like mitigation, I think that's a huge hole in the only document that a lot of people are going to look at. So I think it's important to keep that in.
Yeah.
Jay, I guess
Yes, Mary.
I got a little bit lost with this executive summary that we're looking at now. I haven't seen it before, and I kind of went over the one that's in the AECom report. So are you suggesting that we're going to replace?
Yeah,
This is a new thing that
this is a
okay.
replacement.
All right, and so is our process today to kind of get into the word, like if I spotted a typo or something like that, or is that something that, I mean, we're going to go through each section and say,
Yeah, we're going to finish out with the executive summary, and then Christine will go on to the introduction.
okay, because I guess with the executive summary, when I read the one in the AECom report, my overall impression was that we needed to be more persuasive, and I see that that's your new one, is trying to do that. And the one thing I thought when they explained that that it's going to have, stormwater would normally have to compete with everything else in the budget, and that's why it's better to have utility. And I thought, well, a lot of people are going to say, so what? So this is better to explain why it should be prioritized. And then the other thing, and this is really minor, but in the summary, it keeps saying that in 2021, we formed the task force, when in fact, in 2022 is when the task force was formed. So I would just change that wording from 2021 to 2022.
And that needs to be reconciled, but that's not a difficult thing. Executive summaries, if you'll go look it up, executive summaries are in three parts. First, you present the problem, and then the second part, you present the solution and the recommendations, and then the benefits. And that's kind of what I've tried to do, and that's what I'm going to do when I take that out and make presentations to the public in that manner. And that's the plan for the executive summary. Because as we just talked about, Joe and Frank's, we just said that a lot of people won't even read the rest of the report. Is there anything else in the executive summary that sticks out, Janice?
In the, under recommended utility rates, the last couple of lines talks about residential and non-residential properties. It goes on to say municipal, nonprofit, educational, and religious properties. It does not state commercial. If I owned a business and didn't see commercial in here, I would say, well, it doesn't apply to me. So I would add
put
I would add commercial there.
Yeah, I didn't even.
Under, it's 1, 2, 3, recommended credits, appeals, and date of implementation. The 1, 2, 3, the fourth line down, an appeals process is also recommended for property owners who question the fairness of their fee. There are a lot of people who think this isn't fair. What we're really, the appeals process is recommending property owners who question the assessment of this fee, or the
Or the accuracy.
or the accuracy or something of that
accuracy of
sort,
their
rather than
assessments.
fairness, because there are people who believe that property taxes aren't fair. So I don't think it's an issue of fairness or equity. I believe it's an issue of
Gotcha. That's-
accuracy.
That's true.
Good point.
Okay. What else are we missing that sticks out at everybody?
Well, I thought that we had, recommended in previous meetings that the city commissioners pass a code mandating pervious hard surfaces, and that's not a recommendation in here. It says mitigation if you have them, but I always thought the mitigation would be for people who had a concrete or whatever driveway and changed it to pervious. Because if this is going to be a year before it starts, then, their houses are going up like crazy, all with concrete and hard surface driveways, and as Suzanne pointed out, asphalt parking lots. And so if we make a recommendation, I think that.
I think we've talked about that as we,
Talked about it, but it's not in.
no. I think we talked about us needing a standalone ordinance
Right.
for pervious for a pervious
For pervious
requirement.
surfaces, yeah, but what it's not in here is a recommendation.
It is a recommendation, it's the last bullet.
yeah, on
But
this
it's not,
one,
it's
but
not,
it's not in
it's
the
not
exec-
included in the executive
executive
summary.
summary. It's
Which
not
it
in-
should be.
It
Let's
should
do
be
it.
in the
And I
executive
think-
summary, it's not, it's in the recommendations, but
If,
not in
if,
the
if
executive
Christine,
summary.
she doesn't have to do it, but, and it's not a part of the ordinance, but
I think it can stay out of the executive summary, Jen, just because if it is directed towards the mayor and commissioners who are going to read the entire thing.
No, they won't. Dream on, Frank.
Well, then that's their problem. This is for the general public,
I
and
know,
I
but the
don't
general
know.
public should know that we are recommending an ordinance requiring pervious surfaces. And it might inspire some people to do it before they're mandated. And you'll pay
It would
less.
have to be rather
On
brief. I
both
mean,
documents, Christine, would you be willing to mention that it wasn't a unanimous recommendation, as you know? I felt that the.
whether this is
So,
unanimous makes no
There's
difference.
no
No
there's
difference.
it sounds like the whole committee was on board to
This
recommend.
is not something to be discussed. We can discuss if we want to, but you don't have to have a unanimous recommendation for anything. And to say that we needed that is just doesn't make sense.
We have tried to capture all those notes in the meeting minutes as well, that I believe are available to the public, correct? Or-
They can't possibly wade through all those videos, but they'll think that everybody, had sort of the same sentiment. They will never take away.
Go on, Christine. We're not interested in
All right, well,
extraneous opinions.
Want to go
Keep
back?
going.
I
Are
want
we
to go back,
okay?
I want to go back to Frank's point. I think it is important to show that in the executive summary, what the city is going to do, along with the Lakes Management Plan. We're going to look at changing the code to reduce impervious surfaces. So I think because it is a recommendation, it's the last bullet, it needs to be referenced in the executive summary. I think, the executive summary is going to be read by everybody. It's not just the mayor and the commissioners.
We're going to recommend that we do a stormwater management plan.
But it's about changing the code to reduce the amount of impervious surfaces. In new construction, in renovation, it needs to be noted there.
I think that your actual language is good. I think you summarized that in one
summarized
sentence. No, but that was my concern, is this, as we start adding stuff to executive summary, suddenly they become the entire, you know what I mean? It should be a summary, and that's a valid point, but I'm afraid of this becoming too verbose. Is where I was.
Let's get back on track.
But I think that your language,
Okay.
that sentence kind of summarized that and would easily fit in an executive summary.
Are we ready to go on to the introduction? Is
I think
anybody
so.
else? have-
Anything else on the executive summary here?
I'm confused. Are we going to include something in the executive summary which relates to the final recommendation on page 33? about reviewing the code and opportunities. And then the other is basically, I think what Jan is talking about is partnering with the Corps of Engineers, whoever is responsible for the lake management plan. That should be in here as well. I don't know. I think it should be both in the executive summary and in the draft report, and in the report. And I don't know, I'm ashamed to say that I don't know who the body is who's responsible for the lakes. Is it the Corps of Engineers?
The state of Delaware is responsible for Silver Lake. The city of Rehoboth Beach is responsible for Lake Gerard, and the state is responsible for Silver Lake.
Okay, well then we'll work with the appropriate bodies to develop a lake management plan. I mean, that should be part of it, because I think there's a general consensus that that is important.
It's an important part of stormwater management, and it will be.
But the point is, it should be in the report, so that when that comes up as a question, you as a spokesman can point to it and said, yes, this committee was concerned about that, and it's on X amount of page in the report, and it's in the summary.
My
I don't
suggestion.
know, I don't know where we want to put it.
I'll listen to the stream again, Janice, and get back to you.
My suggestion would be that maybe the last paragraph in the executive summary here, change this to recommendations for future city efforts, and include the stormwater management plan, include the lake management plans, include the revised ordinance. Does that sound good?
That would be wonderful.
Okay, let's do that.
And with the code changes, are we
Okay.
going to do the same thing?
Yeah, she said revised ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, that takes care of that part.
And I think the executive summary, you've done a nice job on that. I think that was very,
generous.
that was, no, it was,
Great job,
I'm
Jay.
being fair and equitable, Jay.
I'm
It's
being
excellent,
facetious.
yeah.
I think it shows that you know the city very well, so you did a good job with it, I agree. Okay, moving on to the introduction. This was really meant to just lay the background for the why the city is looking at finding new revenue sources to pay for stormwater management, providing that overview. We did touch on stormwater utilities nationwide to give that sort of background about what's happening throughout the country and the utilities just within Delaware. So those are the main sections for the introduction. Any specific comments on the introduction here in those sections? Yep.
Go ahead, Jan.
Oh, shit, go ahead, Mary.
Oh, Mary, were you?
Mine's pretty minor. Well, first, I spotted a typo.
Okay.
And it says that in the first paragraph, as comprehensive assessments of the city stormwater infrastructure continue to take place, the necessary repairs and construction of new infrastructure resulting from these actives, and that should be activities, I suppose,
Oh.
are becoming increasingly difficult.
I'm sorry, is this in the first paragraph?
Yeah, and it's about 4 sentences in.
Okay.
And then the other thing, when I read the introduction, you referred to the city's comprehensive development plan, and it says section 6 through 9 of the city's CDP talks about doing stormwater utility work. And so even though I know not a lot of people are going to be reading so thoroughly, it would have been great, I think, if you had in the appendix a copy of that section of the comprehensive development plan for people to refer to when you're discussing it.
And actually, mine is somewhat related to Mary's. I assume BMP guide is best management practice guide. Where is it? I mean, is there, if somebody said, can I read it or can I look at it, it doesn't say where you find it. That's in your last paragraph, the first sentence.
Yeah, and I guess throughout the report, there's references to the Delaware Code sections, which aren't extensive, the regulations, and so it might be helpful to have either a attachment or a link of, I had to look for it and I found it, but it would be easier for people if these things were attached.
I looked for some kind of standardized way to report that, and I have not yet found it. Is it, as a lawyer, is it 7 DE Code 5101, and then erosion and sediment? How should that be put in there?
Well, there's a statute, which is Title VII, and so it would be Delaware Codes Title VII, Section whatever.
Yes.
But then the state also has regulations.
And that's what 5101 is.
I'm not sure whether that's 5101 or that's the statute, but they're both have stuff about stormwater utility, and the regulations are called the Delaware Administrative Code. And so when you go online, it's not easy to find, as you say, and also the citations can be a little confusing. So each section are probably a page or two, so it probably would be helpful to have a copy on the appendix. This is the state statute, and these are the state regulations that apply to stormwater utility. So,
Well, Christine, that would involve more work for Christine, right, Mary? And I appreciate, it's already almost a dissertation. Maybe we could rely on the residents here to be savvy enough if they want that further, they want to read the Delaware statute themselves, let them go at it. But, I mean, I feel like we're now, Christine's services have some, in theory, a finite end for this particular document. And if we start adding sections to it and footnotes, I mean, there's no end to this.
I don't know, I think it's
can
pretty
argue
easy to add footnotes and at the very least, a link to the online, I mean, that's not a problem.
yeah, I didn't think it was that hard, but I'm not going to push it if
No, I
can't be
agree with
done,
you,
but-
Mary, and just like this BMP guide, if you refer to something, you ought to be able to find it.
Yeah.
Google.
So just to confirm, the suggestion is to add links to the BMP guide as well as the Delaware code, just
Yeah,
directly in
links.
here.
Yeah, and that would be
Or
easy to
also,
do.
an easy way to do links is to do a Google search term that's guaranteed to bring it up. That's easier for people. I mean, if the link is like 20 miles long and it's printed, it's very difficult to translate that.
Yeah.
But often there's like a search term a simple one you can type in that'll bring it up for people if it's printed material as opposed to distributed digitally where you can just click on it.
Yeah, that's pretty easy to do. We can do
Yeah,
that.
that's easy to do.
Okay. Any other general comments on the introduction?
Well, I guess just you're unwilling, I know Jade feels strongly that there should, if there are a certain number of members of the task force, you don't feel that a recommendation should at least give some mention that it wasn't. There was at least one person who had misgivings about the implementation, given we didn't even have that GIS data set in front of us and a lot of things that gave me pause anyway.
Go on,
This is the Supreme
Christine.
Court.
That just vetoed
We're
that we
hearing
can't mention that?
information we've heard from the very beginning. We're hearing that all over again, and that just wastes our time. I'm not going to go much further in this.
I'm sorry. Well, the residents will have to make their,
know,
do their own
okay.
assessment, I guess.
Go ahead,
I don't-
Christine.
I don't believe we said anywhere that there was a unanimous decision.
You
so
didn't
we,
say
yeah,
that,
we
but you
tried not to.
also implied it was just, it was out there as just the recommendation, that was the only, sort of
So,
conclusion. but-
excuse me, but when this gets reported to the commissioners, though, Jay, it doesn't, I mean, this is a report about the stormwater utility, but when you report out to the commissioners, would that be the forum for saying that it wasn't, that there was one member that did not agree with the plan?
A minority report?
This is
A minority report, yeah.
this is a committee.
Right.
Like this-
I've heard-
This is
sorry.
not a jury.
I won't belabor it, it's all right.
No, but I just want to
We voted on
understand,
this.
what, in terms of the process and what needs to be explained to the commissioners. Yeah, what would be, when you go to present,
It'll be up to the consultant.
Oh, it'll be the consultant, not you?
She'll be making a presentation to the
Oh.
commission.
Oh,
Plan. Yep.
oh, I see. But if they ask you, did everyone agree? Then that's where you would say, well, there was one that didn't agree.
If we had 100% agreement, yeah.
Okay.
But probably I will not
But it won't
mention
be up
that.
to, it won't be up to Christine.
It doesn't mean anything.
If I
Go
could-
ahead.
If I
Oh, I'm
could,
sorry, Janice.
if I could offer a comment, generally, this body has worked on consensus. We really haven't taken votes. So, and probably if we took votes and broke our work down into individual sections, there probably nothing would have been unanimous. But since we worked on consensus, it's difficult to find a way to fairly point out who was in favor and who was against.
We
So-
did take some votes and we marked the numbers.
Oh, you did? Well, okay,
Yeah,
then
we did.
I
But
stand
most
corrected.
of it is consensus,
Yeah.
Janice.
Yeah.
And
was-
I think
it was
in the end,
basically consensus.
when this report, we'll vote on this. And that's,
We
that
can.
is the decision of the committee, is the majority, right? I mean, so.
All right. Anything else? Any general comments on the introduction here? We are 45 minutes in. We have a ways to go in the report.
I'm really sorry. We're
Okay.
falling way behind because people are making comments that are extraneous.
Just in general, though, this section on stormwater utilities nationwide in Delaware, everyone agrees that that's useful? Okay. If there's things that can be cut out that you think are just extraneous, let me know too. We tried to put in as much information as we could, but maybe there's some information here that you don't think is valuable, so. Okay, so the framework, this is really discussing the benefits of a stormwater utility and the use of the revenue based on what's in the Delaware code, and we will make sure that we're citing the code correctly throughout here as well.
Yeah.
And then the different components of the stormwater utility. Basically, these are many things that we talked about over the many task force meetings that we had. The actual cost of service that the utility would be used for, what the billing unit would be. So this just summarizes all the things that we discussed over in the task force meetings, really.
I did get some feedback on the bullet points. It seems like most everybody wishes that we could number instead of having bullets. So when we discuss these, we can discuss 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
Although
In in the use of revenue section, or,
I'm talking use of revenue.
Okay.
yeah.
and tie that to the code numbers?
No,
So
no,
the-
no. On
No.
page
Number
6,
the items
you have
instead of
bullets.
Enumeration
If you
instead of
just
just
enumerate
dots.
instead of bullets, then we can say, Jay, look at number 3.
Yeah.
Okay,
Instead of Jay, 1, 2.
right.
And and we do, I know don't need to talk about this again, but we do need to get the code reference correct up there. I think there should be, section 10 actually belongs to 5101.
Section 10.
But we'll get all that figured out.
Yep,
Go ahead, keep going.
Revenue, Jan.
okay. So these will be numbers, okay. Any comments on these basic general framework section? Any questions on that? Okay. The next section was the evaluation process, which talked a lot more about the task force itself, why it was established, and what we discussed.
Yeah, we could do a lot better on our discussion of the task force and who we are. For instance, there are legal folks here, there are financial folks, there are several municipalities, elected officials.
And I think you added some more into the executive summary, right, on that?
Yes, I did.
So that we
but
could pull some of that to
didn't
pull
even
in
get
here.
everybody.
Okay,
Okay.
And
Bruce, go ahead.
and the one that I had called out was rather than experience sitting on city commissions, experience sitting on municipal governing bodies.
Yeah.
Since everybody doesn't sit on commissions.
Yeah,
Right,
because
okay.
Janice and Bruce both sat on councils.
gotcha. Okay. I assume you don't want everyone's names posted in here, but if you want them, okay, we will not add that.
Public record anyway.
Okay, so I will provide some more details from the executive summary in here on the task force. Any other comments on section 3, the evaluation process?
Can you, I'm sorry. I skipped to 14.
Oh, yep. Let me zoom. Okay.
Okay, 4.
Anything else there on that? No.
Under billing rate, I think the question may come up is who exactly will determine the rate? And I'm assuming that will be the mayor and the commissioners, but I don't know that for sure.
Yes, and we also had some questions about the reviewing the rate each year. How will that be done? And who will be doing that? And that should be, we could explain that much better.
And the rate structure, okay. The next section was on current and anticipated expenditures. We did add a section here on sunsetting, suggesting that, that the expenses be evaluated in the future, and if evaluate whether or not the storm utility is still needed at a certain point in time at the end of the 5 years that's first planned.
Is there a better word than sunsetting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
What was your word, Bruce?
Pausing the fee.
You had a, you
Or
had a-
reevaluation.
I will come back.
Because sunsetting makes it seem like we're recommending sunsetting.
Well, it also, usually when you're sunsetting something, you have a specific date. So you pass it, at least in my experience, you pass legislation and you say it will sunset on,
Right.
Yeah.
2024. It's
Predetermined.
already been, thank you,
Yeah.
Frank, predetermined.
And as Christine's numbers go out, your numbers go out to 29 already. And probably we could do better than that. We
Could
can,
you do reevaluation or, Bruce, I thought you had a word and I couldn't think of it.
oh yeah, we talked about this and I can't remember what I said.
Yeah, periodic evaluation.
Periodic evaluation, okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Or periodic review, one of the others.
Um,
And what is MPDES?
National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. So this is not,
You might put that in parentheses.
It's referenced
it
earlier.
I think we
in the
referenced it
report,
earlier, that's why we don't
but
have it here.
It is something that, again, people are
But-
going to forget what it is.
Yeah.
I did find it finally.
And the city, I guess based on there was a recent list within the past month, and the city is not on it. So the city does not have to meet the EPA's MPDS requirements at the moment, but it is likely that you will in the future. So it's just something to keep in mind for use of the utility. So we didn't talk too much about this because the city's doesn't apply to the city yet, but just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that it could apply to the city in the future.
I think one thing you could do is just clarify that that is a federal program and it's
Right.
federal clean
Right.
water regulation.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Can I back up for 1 second with the sunsetting? Instead of saying it'll be adjusted over time, can we be specific? I think, didn't we plan out 4 years? And
We
so
plan for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
So I wonder if everyone thinks, are we talking, like, to recommend an actual time that,
Every 5 years?
yeah, so every 5 years, it's, mandatory to reevaluate, or every year the rate is adopted and readjusted based on how much everything goes up? Like, I think instead of it being generic and maybe forgotten, it would be good to add a specific time that we recommend every 5 years. It's mandatory, a council gets together to review. I don't know who does that, but.
We review the capital improvement projects every year. So each one of these will be reviewed every year, and the Public Works Director will have to come forth and make a pitch for those capital improvement projects. And then we work the numbers after that.
Can we add yearly then instead of the generic time?
Yearly reevaluate?
Periodic with annual?
And we can do that. And because we will do that. And we'll also determine the rate of probably won't change it, but determine the rate of the fee.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to do it annually.
5%
Well, that's what
each year it goes up
yeah.
right now.
Budget committee's gonna be doing
The wastewater right now is on a four-year, but as you remember, Christine said that we were going to have a cost of living increase for the fee every year. So we may not even have to I wish we had done that with wastewater, but we didn't. We missed that boat. So,
But Kevin will know what the projects, I'm sorry, he'll know the projects he's going to do, so he'll have a plan for the next year of what he's going to want to submit, so they'll know whether the budget works or not
yes,
for the
we have
storm
we
fee.
have all that out to 29 right now. Bruce?
If I can just suggest saying periodic review in line with the city's capital review. That way, if you go from doing it every year to doing it every 2 years or every 3 years, which can happen, you don't have this orphan thing over here that says do it every year, just in line with your standard practice.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, that's probably the way it'll work, because we're going to be, I'm going to try to, geez, I'm talking out of school. I'm going to try to get us to mitigate this. And when that happens, the city will be moving money from the general fund to the stormwater fund, and that can vary, and that'll be on the CIP list that comes forth. In other words, I'm hoping that we won't have to do $423. We'll be able to do $260 or $270. I'm thinking $65 a quarter.
Well, as part of, at our last meeting, Janice raised the issue of adding on to some of the fees the visitors pay, rental, tax that the rental people pay, and parking and stuff. And those funds would be earmarked for this utility fee, and that was part of mitigation. And I know that Kevin agreed to put together a list of all the fees that are mostly paid by visitors, and I know he's not here, but that would be really helpful when you're talking about mitigation, is to have that list and say, okay, well, we get, I'm making this number up, $6 million from rental fees, so we'll add 5% to the fee if somebody pays, and that money is earmarked. And that way, it brings the down that residents pay, or we call them property owners, not residents.
I thought what we need is a chart with whether we have just operating expenses paid by the impact fee or also capital. We got a little bit of that in this report, but we still don't have it divided in a way that the mayor and commissioners are given options. So I think we might want to concentrate, not worrying. I mean, we do have that 39% of the land is roads, and we know that we can't get money from DelDOT, so that will already, it seems, be funded via the general fund. But the dividing up of the remaining 61%, it's really not clear to me in this report whether a recommendation is made to just have operating costs covered by the stormwater impact fee, or there seemed to be a consensus at the end to have the whole thing covered.
Yes.
So, but are we ever going to present those two options separately so that if maybe the mayor and commissioners don't want to cover 100% of it?
So those were
The
presented
impact fee.
separately in the, when we get into the
Well,
applied
the two
rates.
options, but the numbers for only one of them seem to be available.
Well, I think when I'm talking about the mitigation, Suzanne, I'm talking about how do you mitigate the residents' portion so that it doesn't all fall on the back of residents. And we talked about, we're making up numbers, of course, because we didn't have them in front of us, but if you add $1 to the parking fee and that $1 is earmarked, and we know we get 5 million parking fees, and so you have 1 million. I'm making this up, the numbers.
Well,
but
that's part of
Kevin
the
was going to
problem
put that all together for us.
Yeah, and I haven't seen
well,
that.
that
but-
was only the last meeting, and now Kevin is ill, so he's not putting it together for us, and so we'll get it. Somebody will get it and deal with it, but I think that's
I don't
important.
think we need to deal with it.
I think that's important for the mayor and the commissioners to see under mitigation, is what, if we add this much to a fee that's mostly paid for by visitors or impacts visitors like rental fees or something, then it will reduce what residents pay by a certain amount.
Well, in the first couple meetings, we had a 60-40 split, and that doesn't seem to be reflected here.
It's not our job to tell the commissioners what they should be doing. I don't even know if they're going to agree to this. I think we just need to present our
We need to give them the
recommendations.
data to help them make their decisions, that's all.
So we
I think
So
we
we
just
do
need
have
to,
this section here, the 7.5 with alternative funding sources to consider. And what I've done is I have revised the Excel sheet. So you could have an infinite number of alternatives that could go into this report. If you raise by parking fees by a certain amount. So what I've done is I've recreated the Excel sheet. So if you assume that 20% of these costs are going to be collected from a parking fee, you can adjust that percentage right in here and change those numbers. So, because I didn't want to add, lots of different alternatives in here. I wanted to be able to give you the opportunity, once it's discussed with the commissioners, if they want to target a certain percentage for a parking fee or some other alternative source, they could adjust the numbers based on that.
and I don't even know whether that'll happen or not. I don't know whether they will be interested in doing that or not. We can recommend that, which we've done, which I've also done in their executive summary, and I believe that's as far as we should go. We can give them numbers, but I don't think that's appropriate at this time. If they call back and say, hey, we want to know some more numbers, then we'll have them.
Well, Janice made a point at the last meeting that it's a wonderful selling point
Sure is.
to the residents who vote for the mayor and commissioners.
It sure is, and it's a wonderful point to have in the presentations that I take forward out to the public, or whoever takes them forward, and that's going to be done. Won't tell the commissioners what to do, but once they approve this and once they agree to go to implementation, then we will start doing our outreach and information. And I can make all kinds of suggestions in my presentation, which I will. But I think we're good to go right now.
I just want to comment on Section 6 revenue methodology. We kind of jumped ahead to 7, but so you go through and you explain the different 1, 2, and 3 ways of measuring things, and you lay it all out, but then the last paragraph doesn't flow. It says, it goes back to the original thing that just says we recommend that stormwater utilities should be funded through new revenue, blah, 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 which we've already stated. And I think this paragraph should be a different paragraph that kind of brings home that after reviewing these 3 alternatives, this task force has recommended approach number 1.
Okay.
Are you the third lady?
6.0?
Yeah, 6.0,
jumped ahead.
so it lays out that you can either, 1, measure imperviousness of each
Oh, sure, I see it now.
lot on a parcel-by-parcel basis, or you can categorize like properties together and have tiers, or you can treat all single residents the same as if each had the same amount. And then it discusses each of the approaches. But then at the end, it doesn't bring it home that we recommend number 1. Instead, the summarizing paragraph reverts back to just that we recommend a stormwater utility. So I just felt that paragraph, last paragraph didn't flow, and that it should.
We can clarify that. That's a good
Could you,
comment.
when you do your 1, 2, and 3, instead of, having it all in one paragraph, can you go, here's item 1, then item 2, then item 3? It makes it easier to read, I think.
Yeah.
Than
Break this up into a list here.
yeah, 1, 2, and 3 are your list, and then your third paragraph is, I'm big on lists.
Jay, did you have something? Go ahead, Jay.
No, that's
Oh, you
great.
know, okay. I did want to.
I think Jan had a great idea.
Yep, that is a good idea. Okay. Jumping back up to the expenses just for a moment here, just wanted to note so the table of expenses here is a little different than what was presented in previous task force meetings because I did shift it to start in FY25. Previously, we were showing numbers starting in FY23, so I adjusted everything to start from 25. And I did review these numbers again with Kevin and just updated some when expectations for some of the capital projects would actually occur. So just want to note that,
Yeah,
that this
I
has
know.
been updated as well.
And are you going to be comfortable with that?
I believe so, at least for our estimates. When we move into the implementation phase, these numbers should be looked at again.
You bet,
But
you bet.
I think for
As
this
I read
report,
through
these
that, I
are
noticed some
as
of
good as
that.
we're going to get right now. So,
Okay.
any questions on the expense table, though?
No.
For that, okay.
I did have a comment on just the title of 5.3, data discrepancies.
Yep.
And only because it just, when I started reading, it's like, well, there's inaccuracies, so I think if we could say data discrepancies / reconciliation or something to say that, because at the end, we do say, more investigation of data discrepancies will be required during the implementation phase.
Okay.
It's just that that title just kind of.
I hear you.
Whoa, there's data
I hear you.
That there's an
Lakeisha.
issue, but
Yeah,
not that
there's
we're
an
going to
issue we
solve
didn't
it.
deal
So,
with, yeah.
okay. Sure, we can update that. Okay. All right.
I think,
We're going to change, we decided to change sunsetting, didn't we?
Yes,
Okay.
we're going to change that
Gotcha.
to periodic
And-
evaluations, annual evaluations.
Huh?
Periodic annual evaluations. Okay.
Periodic evaluations in line with the city's established,
Right.
Budget.
That'll be in the
Review.
detail.
That'll be
Yep.
in the detail.
okay.
In line with the city's review of their capital projects. Okay.
Okay.
It'll make our listeners happy.
Section 5, impervious area assessments. Any general comments on this? We did talk about the data discrepancies title for that section, but this is just trying to explain where the impervious surface area came from that we used for the feasibility study.
It will make the engineers happy.
yeah, I think we've it's really wonky. I think you're going to lose
Yeah.
the average reader. I don't know if there is any better way to put this in layman's terms. I mean, when we start talking about data sets being created and then exported into Excel, and do we need to get down into the weeds so much?
Yeah, I mean, this is trying to provide some sort of, the backup information for how they now, that there is science behind this data. But I understand most people probably don't care too much about
But
this.
this is Rehoboth. There will be people who will
That get into
read
it.
every word of it, and they'll point out every discrepancy or missing.
We could open that up and put,
Get too much into it.
put 512, 513, depending on if you wanted to, where the major points were located. Make it a lot clearer.
It's just highly
Can
technical.
you think you have
and
sufficient data
it's
to
highly
carry us
technical.
through
Yeah,
for
it
the
is.
next
And
5
some
years
people
with
will
the
like it and
exception of
other
this
people-
swimming pool issue? Or are you gonna have, are you gonna,
I
are you
think,
assuming we're gonna hire surveyors to do some?
I don't think new impervious surface layer needs to be developed. I think the existing layer needs to be cleaned up a bit to make sure that things are consistent throughout the city. Because I was seeing, some swimming pools were covered and some were not. So things like that. So I don't think it's going to be a significant effort to get that
That's
cleaned
your
up.
best
but-
guess, but we haven't had anyone look at it that closely to determine if the data set is reliable, I mean, no one's looked at, say, 20 properties to see how accurate this, 2018 GIS data set is when there's been a massive amount of new construction in the
Yeah,
last 5
but the
years.
building and licensing has copies of everything, and it's very specific, down to the inch, so.
But that's not in the 2018 data set that would be easier to reference.
Yeah, but I think it's clear that the report says we're going to update the data before we.
Right, but I'm just asking you, Christine, in your experience with other municipalities, how time-intensive and resource-intensive, as in, consulting fees, is it
Right.
to acquire this reliable data set for the entire,
Well, one thing that the University of Delaware report did conclude was that, the impervious surface area has not changed that much within the city of Rehoboth. It has in other parts of Delaware, but not within Rehoboth. So I don't think, even if you did a brand new analysis, unless that if there's specific areas, I think it would be a much more efficient effort to focus on areas that have been developed since the impervious surface area was covered and edit those areas rather than doing a whole new impervious surface area coverage.
Does not
I'm
this
sure
only
that-
become an issue when it becomes an issue? I mean, and there's somebody who's contesting something, otherwise nobody's even going to say anything, right? I mean, most people are just going to go with the numbers. And if they don't, is the only time that you're going to be drilling down and getting into specifics that might be different from the general information. It would seem to me that this isn't going to be a huge issue.
Well, that the appeal process will be set up too, so that if
It's,
if someone does change their impervious surface area significantly, they can submit that and have that change. I don't, it'll be up to the city whether or not they actually go in and actually change the impervious surface layer, if they just change the fee. But, I mean,
I would imagine all this will be settled out in the implementation of the ordinance. Get all this, the mechanics of everything will be dealt with, I'm sure, once the ordinance takes its final form and goes forward.
Jay, are you going to ask that you and your colleagues on the board set some sort of budget to achieve all of this? Or are you just going to do what, get the consultants like Christine and other people to do whatever amount of work it takes to get this underway, where you aren't worried that we'll get appeals frequently because of inaccuracies like,
I could just point out, Suzanne, when Rehoboth reassessed for the first time, they had built this whole big thing in about appeals. One person appealed, and she appealed because she didn't think she was being charged enough, that her house was valued improperly. And she was looking at real estate value rather than appraised value and she was the only appeal in the whole city when the city first redid all of their
I
yes,
can't.
thank you. I can't remember.
I
Tom,
don't know.
you may
We
remember
can
how
rely on that.
I know Bill
But
Sargent was
this
on
is
the
just
city
yet
commission
another
when I
bill
saw it.
people are going to have to cope with, and that's another, actually
well, you
a
have a
minor
bill.
thing,
we just
Christine, on the
answered that.
report.
We just answered that
The
question.
property taxes are listed as being semi-annual, where actually it's just annually in August 31st. In this report, it's mistakenly cited that we pay them twice a year. I'm not sure why, but it's annual, due August 30th.
what section is that in?
That's toward the end of your concerns, which are mine too, that since it's not a lien against the property, there are higher rates of delinquency with impact fees such as this one. It's toward the end under, and it
billing
mentions,
method?
it happens to mention for some reason that property taxes are collected twice a year, which is not actually true in this city, unless you've revised the draft since I looked at it about 10 days ago. There was,
This section has
but
not
it's
been
more
changed.
that I'm aware that there are some, just by randomly looking through the property tax records, we have some homeowners who have not paid their property taxes in some years. And the city either doesn't have the resources or the will or the interest to go after them. So presumably, it's only once the house is sold that the settlement company will.
We're
pay
getting
the
way off track. Let's
property
get back
taxes.
to the,
But
let's get back to the,
I just want,
to the
you
utility.
do mention that the rates of delinquency on impact fees tend to be high because it's not linked to the owner's ability to continue living in the house. So
Well,
I'll get the
Yeah,
section
so
for you afterward. but
The
it is-
actual billing method will be determined during the implementation phase. The report gives some options
fine.
for billing,
No, I'll
including
just
adding
listen.
it to the
Fine,
tax
thank
fee,
you,
adding it
Jay.
to the water sewer bill, which I think Kevin has indicated that's what he would like to do for the city, is to the water sewer bill, not the tax, the real estate tax.
One of the comments, if you're going to skip ahead and talk about billing method, I just wanted to, thought maybe the report should state that the task force did not consider the billing methods as part of our role, and that will have to be evaluated by the city at a later date if they decide to form a utility.
Right.
So what page is that on, Mary?
28.
Under, okay.
Page 28.
That's the section you had concerns
And
about.
I want to talk about the ERUs in a minute.
This.
And so so we can update this, how often are the real estate taxes collected?
Annually.
Once a year? Okay. Okay. All right. Moving back to the rate structures, We give a brief description of the ERU on the stormwater billing units and rate schemes. You mentioned you have a comment here,
Yeah,
Jay?
do we want to talk about ERUs? We aren't using them. We don't refer to them. We don't even take them into consideration. I know we did.
Right.
But
It is the most commonly used method for stormwater utilities, but it's up to you. If you don't want to refer to them at all, we can just refer to stormwater billing units, since that's what we agreed to use.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the committee if we want to use that
Jay,
for, keep referring to them.
The committee recommended the other method, but that's just our recommendation, and maybe it's helpful for the commissioners to see the other concepts and, you know, that we reviewed.
Is everybody on that, with that?
Yep.
Okay, let's go. Wait a minute.
Well, I was just going to say, well, since maybe this section could be reorganized so that the one that we are recommending is the first one, and that we did look at ERU.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
point.
probably better, yeah.
That's better, thank you.
Okay.
That's what the mayor recommended when we talked, but
Just reverse.
it's up to us.
Okay. Yeah, and we do have a note at the end of section 4.3 about why the task force was recommending that option, so, okay. We'll move the stormwater billing unit section up. Okay. And then talked a little bit about the rate schemes, tiered versus variable versus flat rate. The stormwater billing unit is a variable method because you are changing the fees based on the amount of pervious surface area in that 500 square foot unit basis. So
In that,
Christine?
in that rate scheme section, in the paragraph at the end.
in which section? The
in
7.3.
7.3?
In that paragraph at the end, the last sentence is, "The city decided." That should be the task
Up the
force.
task force. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Yep, thank you. All right. Then the next section is the applied rates. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before we
Janice?
go on,
Yep.
On page 18, 7.3, rate schemes, schemes sounds like a scam. Can we use a different word there instead of scheme, rate proposals, and change the word from scheme to proposal?
Yeah.
Or a different,
like a Ponzi
any word other than,
Thing like rate structure.
Rate
Rate stru- that's a great word. Okay, we
Protocols,
could change
structure,
that.
proposals,
Structure is
Structure
good.
is a good one.
systems, everything.
A good point.
I think a scheme is kind of a
Sounds
squishy
like a
word.
Ponzi scheme. It does.
That's what the people are going to think this is already.
No. they'll
It
get
has a
over
bad
it.
Oh, it does have
connotation.
negative connotation.
All right, yep, we can change that. The full, section 7 is rate structures. But yep, we'll revise that, so it's not schemes anymore. Okay,
Or that, yeah.
options, okay, I like that.
And when you move to 7.4.1, I got a question.
Okay,
I guess on 7.3, I guess the other thing is to, we described the three rate structures, and then maybe in the last paragraph, just somehow highlight that the variable, that's what, we say that in the first sentence, but just to somehow highlight
Yep.
it.
okay.
Jay, would you be willing to address why we didn't decide to have a different rate as a stormwater billing rate for residential versus commercial property? I think
I think Dave did a second meeting when he said that it had to be equitable. And that sort of ended it for everybody.
there was consensus that we should definitely have the same rate for residential versus commercial.
That they should be equitable, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure they're equitable, but that's
Well, it's-
one decision.
It's not necessarily the same rate, it's the same method of applying the stormwater billing unit. So for both residential and non-residential, they would use the 500 square feet unit in order to determine the rate. So obviously, the commercial, non-residential, if it has more impervious surface, it's going to have a much higher rate than the residential.
Well, sure, but Jay, or how will we address the fact that we decided not to make a distinction? Because some municipalities do on that.
So you mean charge commercial people
A higher
more?
rate.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, a higher
I
unit.
think we decided
price.
that wouldn't stand up in court unless there was a legally defendable way to make that difference. And I think that's why we chose impact of runoff, of impervious surface, is because it's equitable for everybody. And if you charge one person more for his impervious surface than you do for the other one, you're not being equitable. And Dave explained all that to us.
He did, but he admitted it has stood up in court because business owners can deduct the impact fee, so, and whereas residential property owners can't.
Well, actually, they
Except
can
for
if they're
those who are
renters.
residential property owners.
This is
who
a
are renting
wasteful
out their
argument.
place.
We're wasting
It's a
time.
wasting time.
Keep going.
You're just not gonna.
Okay, for the next section for applied rate are the different presentations of what the rates could be based on, how much the utility is going to fund. So the first one is utility funding all of the operation, maintenance, and capital expenses. So obviously the highest rates. You have a question here. Yep.
It's a question in each one of these sections, but here's the first time it comes up. Under 7.4.1, single-family residential, it says properties with less than 3,000 square feet of impervious surface would be charged less than this, and properties with 3,001 more, because of the way you round up.
Right.
Somebody with less than 3,000 would still be paying the same amount until you got down to 2501, correct?
Yeah, but that's defendable. That's the way we do our water.
I'm just saying, when you say properties with less than 3,000 square feet would be charged less. If you're
Right,
taking
so-
the whole block
Maybe
of
I'm
everybody,
misreading it.
that's true, but if somebody wants to look at the rates and say, wait a minute, why am I not paying less? I'm at 2,750.
Are you suggesting maybe changing it to they would be charged less stormwater billing units instead of just less, or what's the concern?
My thought was that saying less than 3,000 gets us in trouble.
Okay.
Just think that it's a wording issue.
Say which?
You're just concerned about, it's a kind of
The way it
confusing the way
sounds.
it's worded.
I think it's misleading. People could come up with the wrong impression.
The intention was to just note what the rates would be for a typical single-family residential property with 3,000 square feet. And so if,
Stop there.
Just stop there. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, because I know.
and then not, I did want to try to address the rounding issue, because someone will probably have that question if they're 1 foot over, what they would end up being charged.
Yeah, because essentially,
That wouldn't work either, actually. If you were doing that, it should be 3,000, because either under 3,000 or over it. There's a 1 foot gap there. Somebody's going to argue, I'm 29, I'm 3,000 and a half.
But it's just,
Which do I fall into?
it's
So
within
it's got to be
it's
one
within
line.
the 500 unit, not the 3,000.
Right,
So
yeah.
they would fall up into that next, they
Yeah,
would be charged one more
500 is a
stormwater
lot
billing
less
unit.
punishing.
I have to admit that I had to read that sentence a few times myself when I saw it, and maybe,
Yeah.
and once I digested it, I understand it, but maybe it could be put a little
So
better.
if I have a 2,500 square foot property, which is, I don't, but I know people that do, then I'm going to pay the same as a 3,000 square foot property, correct?
if you're 2501,
Right.
But what if I'm,
Goes in 500 feet.
right,
Then it's
2,500, you pay less.
okay, that's, so it's, okay. I was trying to understand it too, I.
Yeah.
And all of them work that way, except the first 100 feet, which is no charge.
Might just use words like smaller and larger. I'm serious, the people with less runoff will pay less, and people with more will pay more, rather than a number that somehow I fixed on that is thinking that there's like different rates as opposed to different volume of SBUs. I mean, it's
I
like
think-
the
I
same
think we
thing
just
with
wanna remove
water.
that
You
sentence,
use less
right?
water, you pay less.
I'll
and-
propose that if you can come up with some language that fixes that concern.
Yeah.
I think we should just remove that sentence. And we'll still talk about rounding up, But just remove the sentence about being above or below 3,000. I agree, it's a little confusing after
yeah, it is.
rereading it.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
We're good to go.
So these are obviously the larger fees with a 5% escalation going up each year, showing what the stormwater billing unit rate would be, and then for a typical single-family residential property with 6 stormwater billing units, what their annual fees would be. And then I have some example charges here that were similar to the examples presented in previous task force meetings for commercial properties in a school, and then what the condo rates would be as well. I did note here for each of these scenarios what the city-owned properties annual fee would be as well. That's something that Kevin wanted to see, so I've added that in there. As you can see, the city would still be responsible for a large portion of the cost. The second option is reducing the amount collected by the stormwater utility fee by 39%, and that was based on 39% of the city and state roads. 39% of the impervious surface area is the city and state roads. So if that was taken out and we just used general funds for that, then these are the rates based on that. And the example rates for condos and non-residential properties again. And once again, you can see that the city-owned properties would be quite a bit more. I mean, the city cost for the city-owned properties would be quite a bit more.
Christine,
Yes.
under section 7.4.2,
Yep.
Under single-family residential, it has that sentence in again about the 3,000.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to scratch that there.
Yep.
And under
Scratch that one.
7.4.3, same sentence.
Yep. Scratch that.
For Lynn, who's going to be doing, I guess, communication, my huge concern, when you look at like you've mentioned the school in here, they're going to, the blank's going to hit the fan with the churches and the schools when they find out. There's just no way I think we're going to avoid it. So we need to figure out how we're going to address that. I just thought I would throw that out because I thought.
Yeah, didn't we talk about that before? They have they have 2 retaining ponds. Oh, yeah, we talked about that. And the schools have 2 retaining ponds, which means they come under a totally different, they do overflow to the city's wastewater, to the city's stormwater system, but only after both of the retaining ponds have been filled.
A figure, a new way,
A new way, totally new way.
Yeah, but I would imagine St. Edmunds and the other churches
Yes, that's true. And
are going to require special handling.
yes, and Lynn and I will do that.
I know, I just wanted to point that out because we were talking about it offline and I thought that's going to be the hardest communication to have.
And there are others, but that's going to be difficult. Go ahead.
Nonprofits, we added into churches, schools,
Well, that's what I just saying.
nonprofits.
I was saying
Right.
St. Edmunds and,
Right. Like Camp Rehoboth, nonprofits like that. They don't have these funds lying around easily.
Okay, the third option was only accounting for the annual operation maintenance costs, not covering the capital improvement projects. Obviously, the rates go down quite a bit in that scenario.
Yeah. Keep going. I won't bring
Okay.
this up. Keep going.
And then in the last task force meeting we had, I was requested to include an option of only the capital expenses. I added in discussion of why I did not include those costs. I don't think that's a good option. I think looking through the Black and Veatch report, no communities only fund the capital expenditures. They'll fund parts of them, but not all of them. Really, I mean, the intention of the stormwater utilities are to mainly cover the annual operation maintenance, and then if possible, some additional capital expenses. So I think just targeting the capital expenses, which when they can be so varied every year, and you can't really plan for that, I think is going to be really tough. So I added a description in here of why I did not include example costs for that, because that can really vary so widely. So
The city manager and the staff will put together a capital expenses program, but it will be managed. And if this rate structure is going to bring in about $800,000 a year, give or take a little bit, which more than covers our O&M. In fact, there'll be money left over. But if the city would kick in $600,000 and we kick in the $800,000, that would probably be easily covered O&M, and then they could help cover some capital expenses on top of that. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. Don't know whether that'll work or not. As you remember, we had 14.6 million square feet of impervious surface in Rehoboth, and we divided that out. So we're probably going to, that's probably going to be the easiest thing to convince people of doing, is to let us go ahead and take care of O&M, and then whatever we get on top of that for capital, and then let them kick in the rest of the capital. And they can work that among themselves.
Right. And
much more easily.
Going back to table 2, these are the expected annual operation maintenance costs only.
Oh, yeah, she
yep.
goes back to table 2.
Yeah.
It's in the bottom, next to the bottom line.
And that, and the impervious surface, as you mentioned, is kind of noted
I don't
here.
think we've talked about that since Dave.
Talked about what? I'm sorry?
The 14.6. We haven't brought that up for a long time. I'm not hearing you correctly. That's fine. Yeah.
Sorry.
729.15, 720.605, 605. I'll bet you the 605 will go on for years.
I don't understand.
I think they're looking at the
Page,
capital expenses chart.
Which is
right?
what,
It's on page,
10.
I'm sorry, Jan, it's on page 10.
oh, you're all the way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's towards the beginning, the table 2. Yeah.
See the middle chart,
Right.
the middle group of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, there's a subtotal of all the annual expenditures there for the operation maintenance costs.
Starts on 2025, 650.
Okay.
Anyway,
so
we'll
go-
cover it.
Okay.
The stormwater fees will cover that, no sweat. If
I
we
think that's
just,
the intention of the bare minimum, that they cover
that's correct.
at least that. That's the alternative. 7.43 would be the lowest fees to cover all of the operation and maintenance costs.
That's probably the one that will be most amenable to everybody as we go forward.
Can I ask Christine something? When, since this is what you do for a living, are you familiar with all of the federal funds and that the city could access that come in, that come into Delaware? Is that something that your business,
For the grants, we,
grants and matching funds and low interest loans and stuff?
yeah. Yes, our company does do that. I don't particularly, that's not my expertise, but yes, we do, we can support that.
Because I know, that there is money available right now, and I just found out
Right.
that the city is applying for
One of the things I think we should say
some of that money that's due Wednesday.
in this section, alternative funding sources, that's what you're talking about now? The grant?
Well, I
Yeah, it's
kind of
7.5,
cheated.
yep.
Yeah, we've jumped, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it would be good that you would put an introductory paragraph saying that the task force agreed that alternative funding sources should be considered by the city if they become available, but the task force was convened solely to evaluate a stormwater utility and did not evaluate these alternative funding sources. And then, you know, these are just basically examples, and I don't think the public should in any way think that we've reviewed these and that these are
Exactly. I agree with
possibilities.
You know, that makes sense.
I think it does, because, I mean, this is a sophisticated city. Everybody knows about the infrastructure bill.
Right.
Everybody is pretty familiar with some of the federal legislation that is passed, and if they read the Cape Gazette, they know about the Water Resource Act, which has been in the paper the last 2 or 3 weeks. So they know that there's money out there, but we don't talk about it, and we haven't evaluated it as we should. We probably haven't the capability to do that. But knowing that there are funds, people might ask. So probably.
It only helps us, but what's the magnitude of this money we were guessing might be available in the next couple of years? Like, is it really that significant?
Who knows?
Yeah, so since we don't
is,
know,
yeah.
but it's
It is
good,
that
it's good to
significant,
mention, and grants are there, but that, you
It's
know,
not just grants, it's 1% loans. There's money out there, okay?
I mean, it's,
sure.
it's mentioned as part of the Clean
Yeah.
Water State Revolving Fund, but what has happened is that the infrastructure bill includes much more funding for those
That fund.
funds.
So
there's
lots
much more money available.
that was available, that's available now. Plus, we didn't even know about the Water Resource Act.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should just make it clear that this is all we did as a task force, was recommend that these funds be explored. We haven't explored them ourselves in this task force.
We can say that we anticipate the mayor and commissioners will explore or apply for, and then you could list, you know, low interest loans, grants, blah, blah, blah. You can start with that, you know.
I just think something, I agree with you, Royce, that we can indicate, because there, I mean, if you read the paper, you're aware of this money.
Right.
And that we're not depending entirely on the residents and the
Right.
businesses to fund this, that we are going after grants and low-interest loans and matching funds or whatever else we can to fund these projects.
Yeah, I would imagine that the commissioners are gonna work really hard to keep capital outlay and not go after loans. But 1% is really cheap. And if you have a project that you can't, I think Kevin's intention is to stretch out these capital expenses to keep them at a fairly moderate level in the out years and fund CapEx as we need them. If you notice, that's what we're going to be doing with the wastewater. But the fact that we have a utility means that we can borrow money and qualify for whatever we want.
Clean water is clean water, whether.
Yeah, and I think we're also planning on maybe getting some resilience money for other things that we're doing, other stormwater things that we're doing. Just don't know yet. Go.
Okay. Any other comments on section 7.5 for the alternatives here? Do you think there needs to be more discussion of the federal grants that are available, or?
Just noting that they are available.
Just noting that we anticipate
Okay, that we
application
anticipate
for them.
Okay. I have that noted.
They'll be explored by city staff or something.
Okay. And I did note here that, you know, basically the Excel sheet can be adjusted to account for whatever percent of alternative funding you think you can generate from elsewhere in order to reduce the actual stormwater fees. Okay, any other comments there? Yep.
Have one, just back on page 21, 7.4.3. I don't think you want the all in the subhead.
Sorry, what was that?
7.4.3, the word all, I think should be deleted
All.
because it's only O&M expenses
Sorry, is that the second paragraph or the first one? Or?
in the headline.
Oh, in the heading, okay.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Yep, you're right. Only including operation, okay. Yep, okay. All right. All right, moving on to section 8, exemptions. We just noted what the task force recommended here to not exempt some of the tax exempt parcels, the state's churches and nonprofits. That the task force did recommend exempting federal properties, the state and city rights of way and DelDOT roads.
Christina, I don't know why I don't remember why we decided to exempt the federal government, and I just remember Kevin saying something like, you know, it wouldn't be worth our time. But then when I saw this table you put in here, it shows that only 6% of stormwater utilities exempt the federal government, and 100% of those who do say that it's because that's in their enabling legislation. And so in our case, we're not prohibited from charging the federal government, and I thought, why did we decide to do that? I don't remember it, and you know, the post office has a big parking lot, and I'm sure has a lot of, you know, runoff, so I would just like to
Yeah,
if you could.
I can follow up with Kevin on that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's just because of the difficulty in billing them.
Okay.
But I'll follow up with Kevin on that.
And I think Kevin's thoughts were we were so far behind, if they'd start billing us for replenishment,
We behind.
that he wouldn't want to make a big scene out of it. But I remember listening to a webinar from some folks in Pennsylvania who were talking about the very thing we're talking about. And they said, good luck with getting any money out of the federal government. And I don't know, I think in 5101, doesn't it hold no one exempt? Doesn't it say that specifically? And I didn't bring a copy with me, but I think it specifically says in admin code 5101 that we're using that everybody comes under.
It does.
Yes.
I looked it up, that we
Yeah.
we legally can if we want to, but, and so the thing that just struck me was that only 6% of stormwater utilities nationwide in this survey
No, exempt them.
exempt the federal
Yes.
government. So apparently, the general practice is not to exempt
Yeah.
the federal government.
That was in the
It's
Black and
interesting
Beach
to look-
report?
It's a pittance, small amount,
Oh, you think?
but a lot of towns have big properties that are federal.
Yeah.
You know, if we had a Navy reserve base or an Air Force reserve base,
Yeah,
it'd be huge.
right.
But Mary, that same data you have, did it show what the rate of compliance was from the federal government?
it
Just because you
it's
don't
this
exempt
table.
them doesn't mean they pay the bill.
It's in this table. It just shows the, what percentage of utilities exempt different categories.
Right,
And the
right.
most common exemption was for public roads. But most of them do not exempt the federal government, and they do not exempt faith-based organizations. So that's the norm.
I would be in favor of scratching out the last half of that sentence. I don't know whether we can legally or not. Where it says, and an SWU fee is essentially a property-based fee. I just scratch that out and stop the sentence, property taxes, then start again. On the other hand, the impervious surfaces on these properties and the running runoff. 8.0, yeah. Maybe not, do what you want, but
The big issue is,
this is not a tax.
why are you?
That's just actually in here, okay.
And that, the rest of that paragraph says what we all know.
Do you know how much of within the city is considered federal property? Is it going to be a significant amount? Is it just the post office?
Thinking it's just the post office.
Okay. So it's not going to change the
No.
rates that much?
Won't.
Okay.
It won't amount to much.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to lose it.
And the roads, right, don't they own?
State,
Oh, that's all state.
most of the roads are state, like 7% are not, but the other, whatever it is, Christine has those numbers. State roads are, I'm sorry, state, I think is only 7%. You have those numbers.
I think we combine them with the city roads in the impervious surface area. Let me get back to that.
The city was 32 and the state's 7, I can't remember. And federal is zip, as you,
Of the roads, 77 are city, 22% are state, and together they account for 39% of the city's impervious surface.
And
Okay.
so doesn't leave much federal property in Rehoboth. Certainly not enough to be worth expending the energy to get the money. In my opinion, and I think it's Kevin's opinion.
And just to clarify, so we're removing federal properties from exemption? Is that what we're saying?
I think we're just not dealing with them, are we?
We exempted them, but when
okay.
I saw this chart, I wondered why.
Okay.
Didn't Kevin warn us that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to bill the federal government? He
And to
specifically
try to
told us.
enforce it, collect
Now,
the money.
Did Dave, when he was here, and I'm so sorry about his loss there, he also he was the one who warned us that roadways and Del Dot is also, from his experience in Newark, that it's
not gonna
impossible to
pay.
collect from Del Dot. So I thought we had learned that back in May or June.
Yeah.
Well, June we didn't meet, but May or July.
But I don't see that as a reason to exempt them. Keep them on the list. We may bill them, we may never get money,
Yeah,
but I
They're
don't
due.
think we should exempt them.
agree. I agree.
You mean, just go on the
To
record that
exempt them from billing?
From the responsibility, from billing.
So we'll just bill Carney, we'll bill the state every year.
Yeah.
We'll bill the state, is that what you're saying, Tom?
Yes.
Because they provide for that in their reg. They provide for billing the state.
Oh, well, then I would bill them if they're providing for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, it's just the federal government we're talking about.
Hmm?
It's only the federal government is
Yeah,
the one
we're
that's
talking about
not
federal.
worth the effort.
But the
I think
state-
Tom was talking about federal.
I'm talking about both, really.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about state too.
I don't see any reason to exempt them. We may never see any money.
Right.
But if the churches say something, we could say, well, we're billing the post office.
Right.
Yeah.
You could
Okay.
send it to North Shores to Joe Biden.
Well, I guess the answer is just to continue as you have it.
Okay.
Well, there's always a situation where as Rehoboth grows, the post office could acquire more land and make a bigger post office.
Not in
So
Houston
you never know.
Then they go out of town. And Dover moved theirs from downtown, so it's very disappointing.
Another way to account for that too is to look at that example in 7.4.2 where you're reducing the income from the stormwater utility by 39% because you're taking basically the roads out of it and just paying from general funds.
Right.
I agree, I think we should, I think Tom's right, I think we should bill the state, all they can do is not pay it. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
The problem is then you don't have
I don't want them to turn around and start billing us for,
well, no, but they haven't billed, but it's extra money if it hasn't been included.
Christine, have you ever seen a transportation authority transfer money to a stormwater utility? for a
The
town?
other utilities in Delaware do not charge Del Dot at the moment, so. And,
I mean, that's what we were told like 6 months ago or longer.
yeah.
keep going, Christine.
Okay. So we have the exemptions in there. The next section is credits. Obviously, all the details of the credit program are not worked out in the feasibility study. That gets into more of the details in the implementation phase where that can be developed. And it can even be developed after the stormwater utility is implemented too. You can sort of, implement the credits in phases
Yep.
as well.
Yep,
So,
when we start making outreach and information, we'll talk about that in that exact way.
yep.
Christine, the last paragraph of the credits section, the last couple
credits.
sentences seem out of order. Again, we're back to talking about owners of tax exempt properties may claim that they should be exempt. It doesn't seem like it should be there.
Right.
This is the very end of section 9, or the
Yes, the
the
very
beginning?
end.
Okay.
Yeah, the last two sentences in that last paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came
Seems
from
out of
another- It came
order.
from another section, clearly, the tech about
Not in,
Exemptions.
okay. These sentences that I've highlighted on the screen here, is this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yep, I will revise this. Okay.
Just eliminate it, right?
Any other comments on this section? The recommendation here is really to implement the credit program, assume about a $10,000 a year impact from the credit program.
And also this, I have it in my notes and I can't find it, but you talked about a $10,000 a feasibility study, or I was getting, the $10,000 number was mentioned a couple times.
That first bullet.
That's what they think that the
So,
program might cost us.
right, so first I thought, oh, you're estimating that it'll be $10,000 worth of credits that people will get, but then it seemed to me that you referred to a feasibility study. Is there going to be a feasibility study done to determine
It's
the credits?
estimated in the feasibility study.
Okay,
For the credit,
okay.
for the credit program, you mean?
Yeah.
That first bullet under recommendations in 9.2,
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense.
I think the word impact is strange. It's the cost, right?
Reduction of the revenue stream, or?
Reduction in fees, I guess, that's what you're essentially saying.
Well,
Reduction in fees.
we estimated $10,000, may not be that, maybe more, maybe less. I think that's what that says, doesn't it?
This
That's
is-
all we know. I mean, if
Yeah, this,
10,000,
you're right.
we don't
Estimated
even
for the
know how much the
feasibility
credit
study.
will be. Like, say, if, we don't know whether the credit will be $50 or $100. We couldn't possibly know whether the 10,000 is accurate either.
Just an estimate.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so for this feasibility study, we assumed to come up with the rates, that we took out $10,000 from the total revenue generated.
Oh, I see.
So that's what that meant, so I can clarify that. It's not meant that we need $10,000 for an additional feasibility study.
Yeah, it's
So-
confusing.
Yeah, that's
think it
confusing.
just needs
So-
I think it's for the
We'll fix that.
purposes of the feasibility study.
Right,
There's some words missing.
yeah.
Janice?
Okay, thanks, Jay. In Fairfax City, our consultant said as far as people applying for credits or for coming in and asking for adjustments to their bill, it's 3 to 5% of the total number of properties that you've built. So it's a fairly small number to begin with, and that's sort of a nationwide number. The other thing, too, is we're looking at $10,000. That's less than 1% of the total expected revenue. I mean, that's not enough to get into a big discussion about.
Yeah.
Would you
Good point.
eliminate that line entirely? I was asking Janice.
I'm sorry?
Would you eliminate that discussion entirely from this?
I would, because I think it's extraneous.
I find it confusing, so
Yeah, it is confusing.
We can,
Okay.
just nix
we'll
it.
just nix it. We'll just talk about,
Let's start
the
it.
city
That's
plans to have a
right.
credit
Should be
program, but,
considered for
okay.
credit.
We'll take that up.
Want to take it out over here too, though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so.
Janice is saying take it out of the section 9.02.
yep,
Okay,
where are we, in here?
in that last paragraph
Yep.
again.
In credits, should it say who's going to cover the money that's gone? So if they're mapping it out, and so let's say it is 10 grand, I think it should be a recommendation that the city cover any credits that are given, because theoretically, it won't change the budget,
Right.
even though it is a stupid number,
It's
but
1%, it's less
I
than 1%.
know, yeah, it's
so
probably nothing,
almost a
but
rounding error.
it's still my mind goes to who's going to cover it, because the bill isn't going to
It'll
go
just be
down.
absorbed
It's
by the
covered
system.
actually in the Excel sheet
Yeah,
by removing
it's
that,
already
that
withdrawn
cost.
from those numbers.
So we just subtracted $10,000 from the revenue
When Bert
generated
comes
every
up
year.
with his yearly total, it'll just be 10,000 less than it would be,
Okay,
and we won't even know.
Yeah.
it'll just get covered or be gone. Okay.
Okay.
Know where it's missing.
Section 10 is the billing method. Oh, we're getting close here. This too will have to be worked out during the implementation phase, but just, we presented some options to be considered during the implementation phase of how to actually bill the fee. I think Kevin has indicated that it will likely be added to the water bill.
I'm sure the commissioners will handle that.
Yeah. Obviously, you want to choose something that isn't a big burden on the city. Setting up a brand-new process to bill people was a much
that's
larger
why-
burden than adding it onto an
I think
existing
that's why
fee.
Kevin wanted to use the utility bill. It's just another
Yeah.
line item in that.
Exactly.
We won't even know we're doing it.
Right.
And then the appeals and proposed stormwater ordinance, just touching on that too, that there will have to be an appeal process set up for people to appeal their fees. And the ordinance will need to be developed as well to be voted on and approved before it can be implemented.
And I imagine that will be worked the same way we work other appeals.
Right.
Just a quick
Yep.
point on the discussion about the billing on the utility bills. I'm just thinking there may be a situation where, like a condominium association has, we talk elsewhere about it. The
Yeah,
association would be
we
billed.
talked about that.
Yes,
And
but
I
there may be an inconsistency between that and getting a water bill. The association might not have a water account.
And I
Right.
think you thought the best way would be to bill the condominium association in a lump sum and let them
Right.
divvy it out.
Or just,
The question may come up that situation may not fit the two things that are in here.
but they could just send the bill to the condominium association without water, and without sewer.
Yes.
Just the third line,
Yes.
which is that,
Yeah, and I think that's what Bruce recommended.
right.
One
So
of
they
the
could use the
things-
existing structure. It's just- They wouldn't have otherwise received a bill.
Right.
Well, some
But in this
condominium
case, they will
associations get a
because-
monthly water bill rather than a quarterly water bill, so they have to tweak it for the larger condominiums, which actually receive a monthly water bill.
Yeah, there's going to be tweaks within the two that are talked about.
Right.
One of the
And
things,
that-
I think I said it
staff
already,
will
but,
have to-
so this report takes you through the things that we did evaluate, like what type of utility, and shows the three kinds, so we recommend this. But then, some of the other things that the report goes through are things that have yet to be evaluated, and like the billing method and the credit scheme. And so I think it should still be clear for the purposes of public comment, which parts are recommended and which parts are yet to be considered, and maybe divide the report and, say, so this is what the Stormwater Task Force recommends, and then the next part of the report, if this recommendation is accepted, then the following things will be evaluated in the future, including billing method and credits and all the things that we really didn't make a recommendation on.
So,
Do we say specifically those things in the report?
Well, they're in the report, but I just think it should be a little clearer that some of them we came to a recommendation on, and some of them are for the future.
Yeah, that's a great
I
idea.
agree with
'cause
you, Mary.
Like Janice had specific examples that from Fairfax, but yeah, we haven't discussed whether, there was even a mention that I didn't know how we would enforce no fertilizer pledges, or people who had done litter cleanups would submit paperwork, like none of that we went
We
through.
didn't go into that.
Let's go through and, not now, but Christine can go through and decide which ones of these we have endorsed.
right.
The thing about it is, I think some folks wanted to vote on this. Or do we want to, how many of us want to vote
What will we vote on?
Yeah.
on this bill?
reporting.
On this
bill, on the
study?
So I think we need to-
Oh, we're going to decide this billing method?
Nope.
No, are we going to vote on the entire?
Endorse the study.
Oh, the report, no, the report is fine. I just thought maybe the report should be clear about what we've recommended and what we haven't.
Is that,
And I think that sections 9 through 12 are really things that still need to be discussed. So
Yes.
move those into a separate section for future discussion.
Yeah.
So make that clear.
So
That makes sense.
that's
Okay.
doable.
And I just wanted, Christina, you had said earlier that you will also include the Lakes Management Study and the Silver Lake and Lake Gerard in your report, in the edited version of it.
I'm sorry, so
You
taking
also-
it to law.
You said, 2 hours ago, that you would include comments about the importance of the lake management study for Silver Lake
Right.
and Lake Gerard as part of the overall report.
That was
I mean,
bullet points at the end of it,
I wouldn't vote for it if it
wasn't
didn't
it?
include that, so I wanted to make sure.
Right. My thoughts on that was adding that more to the introduction and background for the, how it relates and the importance of the city and how some of these funds will be used to go towards those reports
Okay.
in the lake management.
Okay, I just think it's important that they be part of this overall report, that people understand that if we're going to tell them that.
I can add a clause to my sentence that says we should have a stormwater management report as a recommended stormwater management plan to include lake managements for Silver Lake and Lake Gerard.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I just think we need to recognize that they are part of our stormwater system, whether
What
they
I'll
want to
do-
be or not.
Where it says implicit in this is the establishment of a stormwater utility is the prior completion and acceptance of a comprehensive stormwater management plan to include lake plans for Silver Lake and Lake Gerard, period.
Are you willing to include that building code change we discussed, that we're to actually mitigate, and reduce stormwater runoff in the town? Because we could probably accomplish that before this impact fee goes into effect.
Yep, if you guys want to make that recommendation to the
I think,
commissioners.
do we have a consensus on that we would like
You
to
could
have
do-
the
you
building
could do-
code modified as soon as possible, which should have been done probably 10 years ago, to mandate that new construction and renovations include pervious cover insofar as possible.
I don't feel comfortable making all that, but
But
people
that's the
can individually make
fastest thing
that
to-
recommendation to the
Well, it is-
commissioners if they want.
It's already in here. It's the
Yeah,
last
I mean, in
bullet in the
addition to what's in here.
recommendation.
I think what's in here is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then
again,
we're
to
adding-
Jan's point
yes.
about adding the Lakes Management Plan in the introduction, I think we need to change bullet point number 2 under recommendations so that it's the same, that the Stormwater Management Plan will also include the
consistent.
Lakes Management Plan. It just needs to be
Which, whereabouts is that?
13.1.
Page 33.
bullet point 2 under recommendations.
1.
33. It's the second one.
You just need to make it the same.
Just so it's not talking about the CDP. And I don't think it is.
No.
No, it doesn't talk about the CDP.
Okay, good.
It's a stormwater, that's the stormwater master plan.
Yeah, it's adding the same
And,
language. as
and just to clarify too, in the executive summary, that last paragraph will be updated to the heading would be future city efforts, and that will include these stormwater management plan, the lake management plans, and the proposed ordinance.
Thank you.
That's great.
Right.
Okay.
Executive summary, sure, that's great.
Okay. And we're already over, but does anyone have anything they want to bring up on the recommendations and conclusions here? That was the last section. All right. Well, I guess I want to talk to a little bit about the presenting to the Board of Commissioners. Is there a scheduled
Yes.
date?
I
Is
think
that
the
still
mayor
May
is sched-
6th or?
Is scheduling a special meeting, the way it sounds. And you will present the feasibility study to the Board of Commissioners. I don't even know whether the task force needs to talk about anything.
Okay. I think that you had discussed at the last meeting that you'll have to have a reconvene just to approve the minutes from this meeting.
I know, yeah, I know.
But,
I'm not sure how, the best way to manage that.
okay.
I do think we need to vote on it.
You do that by email?
Yeah, we should. Maybe we could have the first virtual meeting of Stormwater Task Force
To approve the minutes from this
and
meeting.
approve the minutes and and congratulate everybody.
So you'd like, all the recommendations from this meeting for the report and executive summary, those should be made before the meeting with the Board of Commissioners?
I think that's what the mayor
Do you-
wants.
Do you want that, do you want to send it to the Board of Commissioners in advance of that meeting? Do we need to target to get these corrections made before
Because that'll be
then?
support, this study will be a support document for the meeting, whenever that meeting is, whenever the mayor has called that meeting.
Does that need to
And
be
the
a week in
public will-
advance
The public will
or
have this,
before?
yeah.
Has to be posted 7 days in advance minimum for FOIA.
Well, we have to
Do you think they
post-
need more time to review, and will that impact when the
No,
the
what'll
workshop?
happen
Okay.
is you guys will get together and schedule a meeting. You'll make the agenda, or he'll make probably the mayor will make the agenda. It'll probably just have one item. And that'll suffice. And then probably he'll ask you within a day or two to send out the study so that it can be posted before the meeting.
Okay.
But as
Along
long
with
as it's,
slides that
as
would
long as it's
be
in the
presented.
agenda, it legally accomplishes FOIA.
Well, the commissioners are going to want to read it before the meeting.
Yeah, they will, and they'll have that opportunity.
And so is that special?
Quite often, what happens is we'll get a copy of a document, and it will show up at the meeting. It may not show up as quickly as we get it. Does
Has
that make
that date
sense?
been set yet for that meeting?
I don't think he set the meeting yet. We were trying to decide if we were going to need a special meeting. And I think the mayor decided that we would
On
have
the
us.
agenda.
Huh?
March
it already
the
on the
6th,
agenda?
March the 6th is listed on the agenda.
Oh, that's the
On the when?
workshop.
And when we had our December meeting, there was a discussion of
Oh,
March
yeah,
6th
yeah,
being
yeah.
a workshop
Yeah, that's-
scheduled
yeah.
date, but I don't know if that'll be dedicated for this discussion or not.
So was this
Looks
our
like
last meeting?
He's thinking 6 March.
You'll let us know.
I put that on the agenda just because
No,
that was
no, no.
discussed in December, but I don't know if that's still correct, so.
Don't do that yet. I
Okay.
think we may be talking 6 March, but don't finalize that until we make sure that's confirmed. But that may be I haven't looked at it.
If we could have a little more time, that would be better. Because if we have to get it a week in advance, obviously that doesn't give us a whole lot of time to make these corrections, but, so if it can be pushed back, that would be preferable. But if it's the 6th, then we'll have
Better
to,
talk to him then,
then, okay.
if you
It's less than 3 weeks.
if you think that'll be too early. Am I misunderstanding?
She thinks it's going to be too early.
Yeah, because then
I-
that really
I-
only gives
I
them
think
like
it-
a week.
Yeah, that's not very long.
It gives them a week to get it ready, to get it to commissioners a week ahead of time. Yeah.
Do we need to see it again?
No, you guys, the mayor and
The
the
commissioners.
commissioners, they need to see it.
But you'll have that by the 1st of March. No?
Well, it would have to be due, what, by the February 27th, right, to get it posted?
For FOIA.
We'll post the agenda, but she won't have to post the support documents until before the meeting, a few days before the meeting.
Oh, okay, that's not due, just the agenda is due a
The
week
agenda has to be
before.
posted by law.
Okay,
I think it's 7 working days or whatever it is, but
Days in advance.
usually the commissioners complain if they don't get something a few days ahead of time. So what am I talking now? What shall I tell the mayor? Shall I tell him that that's just too early to get the final, because there's gonna be a lot of changes,
right.
and he needs to know that. So we can change this date if we have to.
If you can change it, I'd like to be pushed back at least a week if possible, so.
Let me talk to him.
And Kevin has texted me that he thinks early April would be more realistic.
Okay. Let's pursue that way then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just wait to hear I'll try to see if we can, you just don't know whether we're gonna have to meet again, you just don't know what they're gonna say, what they're gonna do. I'm convinced that it's not settled yet, I'm convinced the there's a lot of changes that may be made by the commissioners. There'll be a lot of discussion. This will go on for a while, I think.
Jay,
I'd be happy if
just-
it didn't happen.
Jay, do you mean that after the presentation, let's say in April, that this task force would have to reconvene?
Very well might.
Oh, okay.
We certainly, we could make our decision.
'Cause-
We don't all have to convene. If you want to take a trip to Arizona, you can do it.
No, it's just that, yeah, because I think, yeah, I
I'd like
thought
to do
this
it
was
virtually.
the result, the product of our work with, of course, with the ecom.
I'll
And so
send you
that
my
we're done.
copy as soon as I get it. I'll send it to everybody. And, because it'll be public. But,
Well, I guess you'll let us know. TBD.
I just don't know what to say. Probably, we probably won't have to convene after we get after the commissioners make a decision on what they're gonna do. We probably won't convene again. So probably our only meeting will be for minutes,
And that could be
which
virtual.
and I hope we can do it virtual. The mayor's not happy with virtual meetings. I hate to bring us all in here
Yeah, but we
10 minutes.
But it's for minutes and to vote on this report, the finalized copy, right?
I'll send it to you as soon as I get it. Does that help?
So 2 items.
You want to take a vote on it?
To go over it again?
Well, I'm unsure, we're going to vote on it now?
Do you want to? Do we
I
need
mean,
to?
there's, with,
Would everybody feel better?
A revised draft might be easier for us to actually.
I mean, if we're going
express a vote
to, if we're
about.
going to convene to vote on the minutes, then we could
Vote on the.
vote on the final draft of this and make any adjustments and whatnot.
It's
I
gonna
think
look
it'd be
a lot
more,
different.
yeah.
And Jay, you're not aware,
What do you
is the
think,
mayor
Janice?
thinking of a town hall?
If we have another meeting to vote on the report,
Right.
then after that, we'll have to approve those minutes.
Right.
Have
Oh,
a report of the report.
that's true.
I don't want to, I have to be somewhere. So it was.
Jay, is there a town hall?
Go ahead.
That we were told might take place, though, after that, Jay? Would there be a town hall, though, where?
We don't know what's gonna happen as far as the public, with
Okay.
public outreach. They very well may be a town hall, but I don't think that will involve us.
Move to adjourn?
If we don't vote if we don't make a vote now, we won't have to approve the minutes.
Right.
All right, I move we adjourn.
Second.
This meeting is adjourned.
You'll let us know.
All in favor?